For decades, Boeing symbolized American engineering at its best, a company trusted with countless lives aloft. Then, after a 1997 merger, a single-minded drive for profit began to eclipse its legendary safety culture. The cost of that shift? Over $60 billion lost, a reputation in ruins, and hundreds of lives cut short. How did a celebrated pioneer become the cautionary tale behind aviation's most shocking corporate collapse? The answer goes deeper than most realize. In the decades before its fall from grace, Boeing stood as the gold standard in aviation. Its name was synonymous with reliability and technical mastery, a company where engineers, not accountants, held the final word on every decision that touched safety. From the rollout of the 707 in the jet age to the groundbreaking 747, Boeing's aircraft became icons of American ingenuity. Airlines and passengers around the world placed their trust in planes built under a simple, uncompromising rule: safety came first, always. Engineers at Boeing were more than employees. They were stewards of a legacy. The company's walls were lined with reminders of past triumphs: the Apollo moon missions, the first commercial jet crossings of the Atlantic, and a string of airliners that set the benchmark for performance and dependability. Veteran staff could recite the company's unofficial creed: if it's not safe, we don't ship it. Boeing's reputation was hard-won, forged in the aftermath of early crashes and hard lessons. The 1950s and the 1960s saw the company invest heavily in redundant systems, rigorous testing, and a culture that encouraged engineers to halt production if they spotted a flaw. Stories circulated of line workers empowered to pull the famed "stop the line" cord, halting assembly until every issue was resolved. In the cockpit, pilots spoke of Boeing jets as forgiving and predictable, airplanes designed to give crews every possible edge in a crisis. This commitment paid off. By the 1990s, Boeing's safety record was the envy of the industry. Major carriers boasted millions of flight hours on Boeing jets, with vanishingly few fatal accidents. The Federal Aviation Administration routinely cited Boeing's quality systems as a model for others to follow. When the 777 launched in 1995, it became the first commercial airliner certified for 180-minute overwater flights on 2 engines, a feat only possible with a flawless safety pedigree. Inside the company, engineering excellence wasn't just encouraged, it was celebrated. Promotions and recognition went to those who solved tough problems, not those who shaved pennies from the budget. The company's Seattle headquarters thrummed with the energy of people who believed their work mattered, not just to shareholders, but to every person who stepped onto a Boeing aircraft. For decades, this ethos built more than just airplanes. It built trust, loyalty, and a reputation that seemed unbreakable. In the eyes of pilots, passengers, and the people who built the planes, Boeing stood for something rare: a promise that every decision put safety above all else. The merger with McDonnell Douglas in 1997 set off a chain reaction inside Boeing's walls. Senior executives from McDonnell Douglas, most notably Harry Stone Cipher, brought a new playbook, one that put cost discipline and shareholder returns at the center of every decision. Stone Cipher, who became Boeing's president and later CEO, made no secret of his priorities. He once told staff, "When people say I changed the culture of Boeing, that was the intent, so that it is run like a business rather than a great engineering firm." Inside conference rooms, the old engineering-first mindset began to erode. Promotion and recognition shifted away from technical achievement and toward those who could hit financial targets. Internal human resources data from the early 2000s shows a sharp rise in turnover among experienced engineers, many of whom felt sidelined by the new regime. Hiring patterns started to favor candidates with backgrounds in finance and project management instead of hands-on aerospace expertise. The most visible sign of Boeing's changing priorities came in 2001, when the company announced it would move its headquarters from Seattle to Chicago. The rationale was clear in board memos: proximity to Wall Street, government decision-makers, and major corporate partners. For the engineers and machinists left behind in Seattle, the move was more than a change of address. It was a signal that the center of gravity had shifted. Decision-making power now sat hundreds of miles away from the factory floor and the daily pulse of design and testing. Inside the company, the new incentive systems were spelled out in quarterly reports and internal communications. Return on net assets, cost per plane, and delivery schedules became the metrics that mattered. Executives tracked production rates and profit margins with a precision once reserved for stress tests and flight simulations. Those who delivered on cost and speed advanced quickly. Those who raised technical concerns found themselves isolated or reassigned. Managers began to push for faster production cycles and leaner staffing. Quality assurance and inspection teams were trimmed, and outsourcing expanded far beyond previous limits. The Dreamliner program, launched in the mid-2000s, would become a showcase for this philosophy, relying on a global web of suppliers and just-in-time assembly, often at the expense of oversight. Stonecipher's influence was unmistakable. His hunter-killer management style rewarded those who could squeeze savings from every process. Internal interviews and whistleblower accounts describe an atmosphere where raising safety flags was seen as an obstacle, not a duty. The language of the boardroom, cost discipline, shareholder value, return on net assets, replaced the language of the engineering shop. As financial performance took center stage, the cultural foundations that had made Boeing a byword for safety and technical excellence began to crack. Decisions once filtered through layers of technical review now faced a different test: how quickly they could boost the bottom line. The move to Chicago, the new incentive structures, and the rise of cost-driven leadership were more than symbolic. They set the stage for a new logic, one where shortcuts and trade-offs would become part of the company's DNA. In the spring of 2011, a crisis was unfolding behind closed doors at Boeing's Chicago headquarters. Airbus had just rocked the industry with its A320neo, promising airlines billions in fuel savings. Within months, Airbus racked up orders in the hundreds. Indigo, American Airlines, and Lufthansa all signed deals, and the backlog soared. Boeing's largest customers, especially Southwest and American, started pressing for answers. If Boeing could not match the new Airbus, they threatened to walk. That April, the board convened for an emergency session. The agenda was blunt: how to stop Airbus from running away with the single-aisle market. The numbers on the briefing slides told the story. Airbus had booked more than 1,000 A320neo orders in less than a year. Boeing's own sales teams warned that every month lost meant more customers locked into Airbus contracts for the next decade. The board's solution was speed. Instead of designing a new airplane from the ground up, they authorized a rapid upgrade of the existing 737. The new model would be called the 737 MAX. The decision came with strict marching orders. The MAX had to match or beat the A320neo's fuel burn, but changes to the airframe had to be minimal. The goal was to keep the plane under the same type certificate, allowing airlines to avoid costly pilot retraining and regulatory delays. Internal memos from that period describe a race against the clock. Every week shaved from development meant millions saved and fewer lost orders. Senior management installed countdown timers for key milestones: first engine run, first flight, first delivery. Engineering teams were told to find shortcuts wherever possible. The new LEAP 1B engines, larger and more efficient, would be squeezed under the 737's low-slung wings, despite warnings that this would affect the plane's aerodynamics. Dissenting voices in technical meetings questioned whether the legacy airframe could safely handle the changes. But with Airbus pulling further ahead, those concerns were pushed aside. The pressure reached every corner of the company. Program managers tracked delivery schedules on whiteboards, marking days lost to design debates or supplier delays. Suppliers were ordered to cut lead times and costs. Boeing's leadership made it clear: the MAX needed to hit the market fast, or risk ceding the future of short-haul aviation to Airbus. By August 30, 2011, the board officially launched the program. The directive was simple: no delays, no surprises, and no added costs that could slow the rollout. In the following months, the sense of urgency only intensified. Executives measured progress in days, not years. Sales teams promised airlines that the MAX would require little or no additional pilot training, giving Boeing an edge over Airbus in negotiations. Internal timelines were compressed, and engineering reviews that once took months were now measured in weeks. The message from the top was unmistakable: the future of Boeing depended on beating Airbus to market, whatever it took. Inside Boeing's engineering offices in 2012, the pressure to deliver the 737 MAX on schedule drove a search for quick solutions. The new LEAP 1B engines, heavier and mounted further forward, changed how the plane handled in the air. Flight test data showed a tendency for the nose to pitch up at high angles of attack, a problem that could threaten certification and force costly pilot retraining. Rather than redesign the airframe, Boeing's technical teams were directed to find a workaround that would keep the MAX classified as a simple update of the original 737. The answer came in the form of software. Engineers developed the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, known as MCAS, a program designed to automatically push the nose down if sensors detected the plane's angle of attack was too steep. On paper, MCAS would make the MAX handle like its predecessor, avoiding the need for new simulators or extended training. But the system's authority quietly expanded during development. Early versions would only activate in rare flight conditions. By 2015, MCAS could trigger in much broader scenarios and with more force, all in the name of matching the feel of the previous 737. Inside technical review meetings, dissent simmered. Some engineers argued that relying on a single angle of attack sensor left the system vulnerable. If that sensor failed or sent bad data, MCAS would act on it without any cross-check. Emails and risk assessments from 2013 and 2014 document warnings about the dangers of single-point failure. Several internal memos recommended using input from two sensors, a standard practice in critical flight systems. But the extra wiring, testing, and software changes would have cost time and money, resources Boeing's leadership was unwilling to spend with Airbus pulling ahead in orders. The decision to stick with one sensor was signed off by senior program managers, including Michael Teal. The justification was clear in approval documents. Adding redundancy would risk delays and trigger new certification hurdles. Some engineers pushed back, warning that a single sensor MCAS could lead to dangerous, uncommanded nose-down movements if the sensor malfunctioned. Their concerns were logged in meeting notes, but the official risk assessments minimized the likelihood of simultaneous sensor failure and pilot confusion. As MCAS's authority grew, so did the unease among technical staff. Internal emails from 2015 and 2016 document ongoing debates about how much transparency to provide to airlines and pilots. Some test pilots and trainers argued that MCAS should be clearly explained in manuals and training sessions. Others, following management's guidance, kept the system's details sparse to avoid simulator requirements and preserve the max selling point of no new training. By the time the FAA certified the MAX in March 2017, MCAS was buried deep in the flight control logic, triggered by a single sensor, capable of moving the horizontal stabilizer far enough to overwhelm a pilot. The official documentation described it as a minor software tweak. The engineers who had voiced concerns watched as the MAX entered service, their warnings set aside in favor of speed and simplicity. The compromise was now locked into the airplane's DNA, invisible to most, but waiting for the right combination of failures to reveal its risks. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 plunged into the Java Sea just 13 minutes after takeoff from Jakarta. Every person on board was lost, 189 passengers and crew. The investigation quickly pointed to a new software system called MCAS, which had forced the nose of the plane down again and again, despite the pilot's desperate attempts to regain control. Less than 5 months later, on March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 left Addis Ababa on a routine morning flight. 6 minutes later, it too crashed, killing all 157 people. In total, 346 men, women, and children died in these two disasters. The faces and stories behind those numbers stretched across continents, families, students, aid workers, and entire communities left to grieve. The world's faith in Boeing's promise of safety is shattered in a matter of minutes. After the crashes, scrutiny turned to the system meant to guard the public: federal oversight. For years, Boeing had enjoyed a special arrangement called Organization Designation Authorization, abbreviated ODA. This allowed the company to certify many of its own designs with limited FAA intervention, a setup critics likened to letting students grade their own exams. Internal audits and congressional hearings revealed how Boeing's ODA unit signed off on critical safety assessments, including those for MCAS, while FAA engineers were often left on the sidelines. The consequences of this hands-off approach were now undeniable. As the crisis deepened, attention shifted to Boeing's top leadership. Dennis Muilenburg, the CEO who had championed aggressive production and cost-cutting, faced mounting pressure from lawmakers, investors, and the families of crash victims. In December 2019, Muilenburg was forced out, the most public casualty of the company's unraveling. Behind the scenes, financial priorities had dominated. Between 2013 and 2019, Boeing spent over $40 billion on stock buybacks, money that engineers argued could have been used to strengthen safety and quality. The breakdown in oversight and leadership opened the door for insiders to speak out, exposing a culture where accountability too often gave way to expedience. Inside Boeing's factories, warnings grew louder even after the world's attention moved on. Ed Pearson, a former senior manager on the 737 line, documented skipped inspections and mounting defects as the company pushed to hit the so-called Rate 52, meaning 52 jets a month. Pearson's memos described exhausted crews, missing paperwork, and a sense that safety was being sacrificed for speed. In a 2017 email, he pleaded, "We are at risk of a catastrophic event." His concerns were brushed aside. Other insiders echoed his alarm. One leaked email from a MAX engineer said this airplane is designed by clowns, who in turn are supervised by monkeys. The culture of silence didn't end with the MAX crisis. In January 2024, a 737 MAX 9 lost a door plug mid-flight over Portland. Investigators found that 4 bolts meant to secure the panel were never installed. The FAA responded by freezing Boeing's production increase, keeping output well below the promised rate 52. Meanwhile, Airbus surged ahead, leading in both orders and deliveries for a 3rd straight year. For many inside Boeing, the old rule, if it's not safe, we don't ship it, had been replaced by a dangerous new normal. Today, every Boeing aircraft that takes flight carries the weight of public scrutiny and industry skepticism. As safety investigations widen and market rivals surge ahead, the consequences of prioritizing profit over engineering still ripple across global aviation. Trust, once lost, is not easily rebuilt, and the future of flight now depends on whether accountability can outpace complacency.